I grew up in a family where religion was so pervasive that we never understood that there was something other than being religious. So it incorporated all aspects of my life. I always experienced being part of the Christian family and being in my local church the most empowering, the most exciting, and the most politically engaged space of my life. So I never had a sense of the distinction between what we believed in our faith life and how we acted in our political life. So I'm often asked how it feels to be the first woman president of Union, and I can't help but think about that in this political season when we're having unfold before us the nomination and now the campaign of the first woman who's running for president. I wish this school had figured out 100 years ago that women could do my job, because I think it would be a better school. And I think the same thing about the United States. I wish that it was not 2016 and that we're having the first presidential campaign that has a woman in it. So here we are in 2016 in the middle of this obnoxious, this often terrifyingly conflicted presidential campaign. And what it's showing to, I think, everybody in this country is the tortured underbelly of our own stories about who we are as a people. Our politics, as it unfolds on the screen before us, on television and on the public stage, is not reflecting the best of our religious traditions. It's not reflecting the love commandment, either to love God or to love neighbor. For me, as a Christian, one of the most disturbing things has been to see Christians claiming the gospel as the weapon that they use to promote hatred. I think, what book are you reading? This is not the Bible that I grew up reading. I think it's also the fault of the media that we don't hear more from the many deeply religious people in this country who are as disturbed and horrified by what's going on as I am. There are many people of good conscience who are Christians and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and Hindus who watch all of this with horror and think, this is not who we want to be as people. This is not how God calls us to be in the world. This is not what our faith tradition says about who we should be. We are all equal. We are equal before God, and therefore we need to have a political system that counts us as equal. The concept of one vote, one person, the concept of representation, the idea that we get to make up the way we live together. There's hardly a religion in the world, none that I can think of, that doesn't have these notions of love and of connection and of care for our neighbor and for our world at the core of the message that they speak. And those are political terms. We need to be more aware of what love looks like when you put legs on it and it becomes a policy. It becomes a statement about social justice. Love is always, relentlessly political in its nature.
Where do you start? With policy. Where do you stand on pro-labor, anti-poverty policy that build up economic democracy through employment, living wages, alleviation of disparate unemployment, a transition away from fossil fuel, labor rights, affordable housing, safety nets, fair policies for immigrants, changing war policies that preempt a real war on poverty? Where do you stand on equality in public education and guarantee that every child has access to a high-quality, well-funded, constitutional public education? Where do you stand on health care for all and eventually universal health care and Social Security and Medicare? Where do you stand on environmental protection and protection of women's health? Where do you stand on respect for all people and all religions, Christians, Jews, Muslims, the Jewish child and the Palestinian child, the Latino, the African, the Asian, the European? Where do you stand on fairness in the criminal justice system by addressing the continuing disparities that hurt black, brown, and poor white people? Where do you stand on the proliferation of guns? Where do you stand on protecting and expanding voting rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, labor rights, religious freedom rights, immigrant rights, and never giving up on the fundamental principle of equal protection under the law? Let's deal with the heart of your policies. And when we know where your treasure is, when we know where your policies are, we'll know where your heart is.
So I often think about this love that is always political as a revolutionary love. And by revolutionary, I think that love is always a social force. It has power in the world if it's actualized. It tears things down when they're broken or when they're oppressive. And that's revolutionary. It basically, that revolutionary love is a love that is always in motion, turning over and recreating the fabric of our human life together. We never make moral decisions in a vacuum. There is never a situation in which you have to make a hard decision where the clarity of the difference between right and wrong makes that decision easy if one is aware of the context in which you're making your decision. But Jesus didn't tell us that we only had to make moral decisions when we knew clearly what the right one was. Jesus called us to live faithfully every moment of our life, which means in the course of a single day, we're making morally complex decisions, which means we also have to be willing to make the wrong decision, because not making any decision in the context of faith is to simply cop out of the call to live and be in the world in a just way. So in any campaign, a Christian, a person of faith, may find themselves voting for what they consider to be the lesser of two evils. That is a legitimate moral stance to take towards a form of political engagement.